Well, what is going on, everybody? Welcome everybody into the Hump Day Hotline on the Buffalo Rumblings
Hump Day!
Vidcast Network.
Got
It
it in
is so
early.
good. What's that?
I got it in early there.
You get it in. I'm good with it, dude. So, my name is Joe Miller. I'm the co-host of this here show, right alongside my very good friend, one of my best friends in the whole world, the other co-host of this show, Jay Spencer King. Jay Spencer King. How are you? How you dealing? How you feeling after it's been a couple weeks? Are you all up in your bag still? Or are you settled?
I think I'm good.
Really?
I think I'm good. Every time I talk about it now, it's like, it's just more disappointment than it is like really anger or anything like that. It hasn't really ruined my week. Even last week, it was like, you know what? I had like a day or so, and then I was like, okay, I'm just over it.
Yeah. There's a lot to be said for. I think I reconciled at some point when it was like we came a long way. Like we came from like 5-5 and 6-6. Like it wasn't impossible, but it was highly improbable at one point that we were going to make the playoffs. I mean, this team did not look good. I mean, had they held on to Ken Dorsey, I mean, we're probably having a different conversation even right now. Like there was no playoffs. We'd have been done probably for like a month, right? I mean, so there's a great deal of like the season probably was not the success we wanted, but it was probably a success with what we were given. And I think I've reconciled it that way. So I'm no longer down in the dumps like last year, as we all know. Like I've said, we've talked about it 100 times. It took me months. And even when the season started, I was like, I don't know why we're doing this. Like I was just totally just like, this is dumb. Like, is this going to happen again? And it didn't. But yeah.
I said on code of conduct, it's like, so when in the 90s, when they were going to the Super Bowl back to back,
yeah,
I was a child, like I was young. So I was born in '86. I don't hide it like some people do. Like they try to act like, oh, I was all in. No, you were a kid. Like you were
everybody was at the greatest comeback of all time. Everybody was there. It's like,
oh, I was there.
No,
you weren't. You weren't. But okay. But the thing is, like, I just couldn't imagine like that level of heartbreak because, like, AFC Championship loss, then divisional round loss, to lose at home to the Bengals the way we did, divisional round. It just, so now this year I'm actually a little numb. It's like it took at first I was upset, but I was more upset at like people yelled at me, and it's okay. I accept it. But I think I'm at this place where I'm just tired of I'm tired of McDermott. And I was a huge McDermott supporter, and for a long time, like I'm like, you don't talk about McDermott. He's been the most successful head coach since Marv Levy that Buffalo has seen. You don't get, and I can understand every argument for keeping Sean McDermott because I was on the side of it.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm just at this point where it's like, I get it. Sean McDermott is a head coach that will win us the division, and he'll get us to the divisional round, and it will look, the team will have success. If we do this every year, we're going to make the playoffs and win a division every year. I guarantee you they're going to fill stadiums up, sell jerseys. It's going to be great. It's going to be good competitive football. But I want to win, man. Like I want a Super Bowl. So I'm just at that point now where I'm just, I don't know. And that's what I was going to ask you before we went live. And I'm like, what's your perspective at this point? Like, where do you, after the loss now, and after you can kind of go back and reflect on it, where do you stand when looking at how you feel about Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott, either together as a tandem to lead this team still to the future, or even separately? How do you feel about them going separate? And also, before you say, I just want to thank everybody. There was a few people in the comments that wished me a happy birthday. I just want to thank everybody, all the wishes on Twitter and everybody that reached out. And it was all love. I appreciate it. It was a really good day.
Yep, I was actually going to address that as well, that those guys that they were in there wishing you happy birthday and then welcome them into the show. So thank you to everybody that has joined us, whether you are watching this live right now on YouTube, Twitter, or Facebook, or you're consuming it later on some podcast platform. Please please subscribe wherever you are. Hump that like, as we like to say here on Wednesday for the Hump Day Hotline. But to answer your question, the big conversation and the big punch back to the whole, fire Sean McDermott piece was effectively, well, who are you going to get? Well, who are you going to get, right? Who are you going to get that's better? And the reality is you just don't know at that point in time when we were first having the conversation. Like, you don't know who's going to be available at the end of the season. You don't know what coordinators are going to potentially work out or not. There's a great deal of the right quarterback kind of can have a tendency to make a head coach pretty good
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? As far as that goes, we've seen that in the past. You could strike gold with a guy like Mike McDaniel, who never was an offensive coordinator, never was a play caller, but goes to Miami, and you can tell he's clearly got a gift for being a head coach and for play design and for play calling. Like he's a guy that's going to be successful in this league. A guy like Dan Campbell, yada, yada, yada. Now, all that to answer your question. You don't know who's going to become available. The reality is this, and we've talked about it on this show. In the state of Ohio and in the state of Michigan, there's one game that's almost more important than the national championship game, and that is the Ohio versus Michigan game, the OSU versus Michigan game. And I've said this to people that are Bills fans before, and they don't believe me. I lived in Columbus for 13 years. When you are in that environment, the most important thing of the season is to beat the other team. If you're OSU, you beat Michigan. If you're Michigan, you beat OSU. And head coaches get fired if they don't beat the other team for 3 or 4 years. If we can't get past Jim Tressel, we're going to fire you until we find a guy that can get past Jim Tressel. And then when they find somebody, then OSU is like, well, you've only got so many shots to get past that guy before we fire you, because that's the most important thing to them. All that to say this, how many times, to your point, do we have to do this and lose to Andy Reid? At this point in time, all things being equal, not that Pat Mahomes and Josh Allen are equal, but they're close. The reality is Pat Mahomes has an edge up automatically because of Andy Reid. Andy Reid is probably the best coach in football right now and has been for the last several years. So who are you going to get? So if you get rid of McDermott, who are you going to get? I think Jim Harbaugh would have been pretty good. And I think if Jim Harbaugh would have been given the opportunity to coach Josh Allen,
I'm just saying that could have. And then it's incredible how when you have these conversations, like, well, who are you going to get? And then when the coaching cycle starts, everybody's like, oh my God, Jim Harbaugh. Oh my God. And there's like 3 or 4 guys where everybody names, and it's like, this guy would have been fantastic. It's like, well, when we talked about this 3 months ago, everybody wanted to say that it's foolish. And again, I get it, because I was on the side of saying, I'm sticking with McDermott, but I just don't feel like he's that guy that's going to be able to get us to that next step, man. And I think he's a great coach. I think he's a great guy. I think there's a reason why, like, the players rallied around him after the Ty Dunn article, so I think he's a good dude. So I'm not saying this with any malice in my heart. Love Jamie. Thank you, Jamie. With any malice in my heart, but I just don't think he's going to get us there. So I'm going back a couple months to my take when I said that the Bills need to find their Steve Kerr, and that's where I am.
Yep. I can get behind, and I can talk both sides up and down, right? So I can talk why we should keep McDermott, and I can talk about the love and the change and the fact that he does pull the best out of a roster, and looking at what he did this year with the defense and everything else. And I can talk the other side of it, that, in certain games, the defense has been the problem, right? When it's come down to it, outside of the Cincinnati game, which they were a problem, the whole team was a problem last year against Cincinnati at home, but the defense has let us down when we've needed it most, as far as that goes in the playoffs. The defense is what's potentially kept us from advancing. So I can talk both sides of it. I don't have the answer. Not that you're looking for me to have the answer. I don't know. I mean, at this point, you've got to beat Andy Reid. Well, we can do it in the regular season. Well, in the playoffs, it's different. It's different in the playoffs, right? And I think that might be the difference. If the Bills were, what are we, 3-4 against the Chiefs right now, right? With McDermott and Josh Allen, 3-4. If the Bills were 1-6, 0-7, I think there's a different conversation happening with Terry Pagula and Brandon Beane, I think, to that point. But the fact that we have beaten him in the regular season probably bodes more to his side. Like, well, we can beat them. We just have to figure out how to get past them in the playoffs. But, dude, they came in our house and they didn't struggle. They didn't have a single false start. They didn't have a single offensive line penalty. Like, they didn't have any trouble. Like, they just came in and beat us.
Because it's been a couple weeks, so I guess like the anger of it is gone. But like, how upsetting of a call was it for you when Damar Hamlin got that fake punt?
So yeah, and apologies again to everybody. This is only my second show since that loss, and I didn't do my show obviously afterwards because I was going to do nothing but fill the airwaves with a bunch of negativity, and there was just enough people talking that my voice didn't need to be heard at that point in time. the problem that I had with it was I'm sitting there and it's like they shift and then waited, and then the defense adjusted because they knew what was coming. It was the worst fake punt I've ever seen in my entire life. Like, there was no surprise. There was no, like, literally they shifted and then the snap came and then it was like, he's got the ball. Like, there was it was the worst. I was literally at that point I was numb is the best word. When it happened, I was just like, "Oh, here we are. Okay, got it." Right?
And then when Jordan made the play on the goal line
Yep.
and we got the ball back, it still, to me, it still wasn't. It just didn't. I don't know. I just felt like drained at that point anyway from the punt and from. I would think, for me, honest to God, one of the most egregious things of the day, and I see my guy RJ in the comments asks how Matt Smiley still has a job, but for
Mhm.
me, it's also, I'm sure it's a combination of Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott, but the fact to keep Sam Martin active when you knew that he could not punt, and I have not been a fan of Matt Hack when he was on the team.
Mm-mm.
I didn't think that, but I promise I thought he was a better option than a Sam Martin with a pulled hamstring.
Yeah.
When you have a guy that can't punt 20 yards down the field, you are limiting your your options for anything that you can do against the defending Super Bowl champions
That's right.
at your house.
That's right.
And I just think like it. I don't even know how much is being talked about, to be honest, because I've kind of taken a step back from talking about the Bills for a second,
Mhm.
just to But it's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I feel like that's not being talked about enough because that's the reason you call that DeMar Hamlin fake,
Oh, yeah.
because you can't punt the ball. And
That's
then
right.
you give the ball back to Patrick Mahomes on the 35-yard line, or because he can't punt, you try to punt, you give it back to him on the 45-yard line. And again, these are coaching things.
These are
And in the
coaching.
last game of the year, now it seems like every single year we go into these games and he makes these boneheaded coaching decisions.
Yeah.
So you want to blame 13 seconds on the defense? So be it. Okay, you could blame it on Leslie Frazier. He's gone. I put it on the head coach. You want to blame, like, we can go back to all of the little moments that we
Mhm.
talk about, the heartbreaks for the Bills, and it comes down to me to coaching decisions,
Mhm.
mismanagement of the clock, mismanagement of it, or like he always say, execution and play calling. Okay, the execution of it. Your job as a coach is to get these guys prepared to
Mhm.
execute it
Mhm.
in those moments. And I'm sorry, that was a long ramble
Nope,
when
nope. You're the ramble on ramble on is, sorry.
frustrated.
As Robert Plant would sing. No, it's I don't have a problem with anything that you're saying. I don't know necessarily what the answer is. I think I said on I don't remember what show it was. I feel like nothing is going to change primarily because the last thing the Pagulas want is to move into a brand new stadium with the risk of a new head coach and a franchise that's now a 500 football team. And with Sean McDermott, they at least know they're not going to get that. With Sean McDermott, they know they're going to get the playoffs. And if you're moving into a brand new stadium, what do they have to do? They have to sell luxury boxes. They have to sell season tickets, and they've got to sell personal seat licenses. The most important thing they need, and let's be honest, as much as we as Bills Mafia, even during the 17-year drought, there's the reality is we had a great season ticket holder base. And for the first 4 games that were at home of the season when it was warm and there was hope, we were all there. By December, the stadium wasn't full. It was mostly full for a 72,000 seat stadium, but it wasn't completely full. And the last thing you're going to do is rock the boat and put yourself in a situation where all of a sudden we're 7 and 8 every year and we got to sell $30,000 PSLs, personal seat licenses. That's bad management of a $1 billion organization. So that's probably part of it. But again, the Bills probably didn't know either that Jim Harbaugh was going to be available. So, or Bill Belichick. I mean, I don't. Where would you be at Bill Belichick? You move on from Sean McDermott and Bill Belichick is the head coach. Who knows how much power Bill Belichick would have wanted? Maybe he would have wanted less. I can tell you this: Bill Belichick. And I'm not a fan of Bill Belichick per se. I'm glad he's gone from New England. But Bill Belichick, thinks differently of Josh Allen than almost any other player in the NFL. And we've seen it from his embraces after football games to waiting outside of the locker room for Josh to come out to have conversations with him. Like,
No, he went into the locker
oh, he
room
went into
to talk to Josh Allen. Yeah, he
like,
didn't wait. He went into the Bills locker room
right,
in Buffalo
right.
to talk to Josh Allen. That's
What
crazy. Yeah.
what Belichick thinks of Allen is different than probably what he thinks of every other player in the NFL. So, and we're also talking about Belichick that can see talent. Now he's getting older, but I mean, Bill Belichick, John Fina tells a wonderful story about Bill Belichick when he was the head coach of the Cleveland Browns, wanted to have a personal, like one-on-one, just kind of like workout session with Bill. And Bill watched him do a couple things. And then he used a profanity, F. And John was like, am I doing this wrong? And he's like, you're a first rounder, which basically told Bill that he's not going to get a chance at drafting him. You're a first rounder, right? And John was. John was, I think, projected to go in the third or fourth round, and the Bills took him in the first round. So there was opportunities. There was guys out there that could potentially, right, come in. This is where we are.
And again, I understand the arguments to keep him. I everything you just said there about making sure that you're competing every year. Bruce says it all the time. Like, it's about having a team that can consistently be good enough to have a chance to get lucky and win. So I get it. We haven't had that 1 year of luck where it's been our time, but
right.
So I understand the luck aspect of it. Like, I get it. Like, you got to be healthy at the right time. You got to be clicking at the right time. Like, I get all of that.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look at, for instance, this team, we didn't lose because, we had injuries. We were beat up. We didn't have Matt Milano all year since week 4, and we didn't have, we got beat up.
Mm-hmm.
But we didn't lose this game because we were injured. So the game against the Chiefs, we didn't lose because we were injured. We didn't lose because we had a bad offensive game plan. We didn't lose because the defense really struggled again. I don't think they struggled. I think both teams kind of did what they had to do to kind of put up enough points. I think we just had moments there that we didn't show up. And it seems like every year, everybody wants, not everybody in Buffalo, but everybody outside of Buffalo wants to put the blame on Josh Allen, and they want to talk about how bad he plays in certain moments and how he's this and how he's that. Josh Allen still does not have any turnover, like any interceptions like that. He's not out there throwing the ball over, turning it over 15 times a game in the playoffs. You have a game where the guy who's supposed to be, and I love Diggs, so I'm saying this because I hold everybody else accountable. You got to say it too. You got a game where you got the best wide receiver on your team drop a pass that hits him in like on his bicep.
Right.
And that's not the only one. It's not just on Steph. There's several plays, but it wasn't Josh. And it ticks me off because now you're going to look at this guy. All these years we went since Jim Kelly. We have moments of like inspiration. You have your Doug Flutie's come through and he gets people excited. You got your Tyrod where you make the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
You got moments where you have some inspiration, but now you finally got Josh Allen. You got this franchise guy, and you know how good he is. He's a unicorn, and I just feel like I understand everything you're saying about the stadium and about. But you got this unicorn, and I hate the fact that I have this feeling that they're going to waste the prime of his career because they want to sell enough tickets in the damn stadium, man. And we can't get one and we probably can. I don't want to sound too negative about it or, because we can still get it, but it's like 3 opportunities that I felt like we really should, the 20 year, that MVP runner up year, 13 second year, 21, and this year. And if I'm overreacting, I get it. Tell me in the comments. I love y'all. I'm not taking anything personally today. I'm still in my feelings, but let me know if I'm wrong, or even you, Joe, if you don't feel the same.
I told you I could argue it both ways, so I'm not gonna argue against you on that situation. Let's do this. Let's take the last couple minutes of the show and let's talk about the transition of both the offensive and the defensive coordinators. So, and let's start with the defensive coordinators because Trey Williams says, I agree with coaching on the D-line 100%. And I'm just bringing this up. He said massive investments, no show against top quarterbacks. The reason that I bring this one up, and we'll talk about the defensive coordinator first, is because Bobby Washington is gone, who was the assistant head coach. I don't think he was the assistant to the head coach. He was the assistant head coach and defensive line coach. And he takes a job as the defensive coordinator in Chicago. Which to me, at first, I'm like, is that a promotion? Because he's the assistant head coach. So I'm not necessarily sure That was a don't go. I maybe it's a promotion. Maybe somebody in the comment section knows if it's a promotion. Maybe you know if it's a promotion. But for me, it was almost like a don't go away, mad girl. Just go away, right?
I think he wants the opportunity to be able to call the defense for once. And
but he wasn't even the defensive coordinator here.
I'm sorry.
He wasn't even the defensive coordinator here.
No, so that's what I'm saying. I think now he wants the opportunity to call, and I don't know how much power he's going to be given out there in Chicago, but I think the opportunity to call his own plays is going to feel like, so because he could have been the defensive coordinator here, but I'm happy, and I know we're about to go there in a second. I'm happy we got the guy we got, a defensive coordinator. Like I was rooting.
Is Matt Eberflus calling defensive plays out there? I don't even know.
Well, I don't, and that's why I said I don't know if he's going to be calling. I don't know how much power he'll actually be given out there in Chicago. But in my mind, I'm thinking that if you got to get rid of one of the two guys, I'm keeping.
Yes, but it's not about getting rid of. Maybe he knew as well. Maybe they knew, like, hey, look, we're giving this job to Bobby Badge. Yeah. Like maybe that was out, and he was like, well, if you're giving it to that guy who was the defensive backs coach a couple of years ago, and then you made him linebackers coach, and now you're making the defensive coordinator over me, so I'm getting passed over. Maybe that made him mad. This is pure 1,000% speculation. Have no idea. One thing we do know, though, is that defensive line underperforms and has for years. They have put more money, aside from Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs, they have put more money in that defensive, did I say offensive line? Into that defensive line than any other position group on the team by a lot. Like dwarfs what the offensive line group gets, like dwarfs it. And they have not come in clutch when needed. Let's just go back to the playoff game. You've got two tackles on that Chiefs team that we talked about it, easily exposed, very easily should have been taken advantage of. And there was barely a whisper. They didn't even sack him. They didn't even get to him. The only person that really had a decent play from that defensive line was Von Miller, and it got called back on a penalty.
Of all people, right?
Right. Of all people.
Like we've been talking about him. We've been bashing him and stuff because he hasn't been showing up. Not you, but what I mean, we've been bashing people because, and then the most effort that you get in the playoff game is the guy that hasn't been showing up. Like the guy we've been giving love to, where was Ed Oliver? And I love him. We all love him. And we all talked about how he's outperformed or at first it was like he shouldn't get the contract. And then he showed us you guys were wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
Look, we need this in the playoffs, man.
Yeah. So the question is did they move on from the D-line coach for that reason, or did they move on? Like it's pure speculation. We don't know. I haven't seen a report or heard anything. Maybe somebody has on why Bobby Washington's gone, but
see, I wouldn't think it's that personally. I think the opportunity. I think for the opportunity for him to be a D coordinator, whether he's going to call the plays or not, probably. I know the way you worded the question is like, well, is it a step up? I think the defensive coordinator position is looked at like, it's that next step. Even though we have the assistant title, I feel like it's more title than it is an actual position. You know what I mean? I could be wrong. That's just the vibe I get.
Well, they throw that label on people so that they won't leave, right? They throw that
label and that's what I'm saying. I feel like it's just that label, but I feel like to actually be a defensive coordinator, I think it's I think I don't know. And again, none of us know.
Well, then let's transition to the thought. What are your thoughts around Bobby Babich and him getting that? Expound. Give me a minute of thoughts on that if you've got them.
There's a couple things like when you start to, when people around the league have a certain respect for you and you haven't made noise. He's not the kind of guy. Like, he's not the kind of guy that's like on social media heavy. He's not the kind of guy with the personality where he's in everybody's face. He goes to work and his reputation is what we hear about. We hear about how every position group that he's played with, that position group has gotten better. When he got to the linebacker position, Matt Milano becomes an all-pro. You see what Bernard did when he was the safeties or he was the safeties coach.
Yep.
Both that year, we had two all-pro safeties in Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde.
Yep.
I love his work ethic. I love everything about him. I think Terrell Dotson tweeted out something about like he's the best coach. Just period. He's the best coach I've ever had.
Yep.
So again, you start to hear about how everybody speaks about a guy, and you can't help but want to keep him around. And I would have been very disappointed if we would have allowed that guy to go. And I know he interviewed with Green Bay, and I think somewhere else.
Miami.
He
Did he
needed
go
to
to
stay here in
Miami?
Buffalo.
Yeah, there was the attention that he got
Oh, it's insane.
was surprising. But he also, he comes from a coaching lineage, right? His dad was
Yeah.
a coach.
Yep.
So he's got the DNA for it as far as that goes. I like it too. To me, this is probably the best choice. The question is who's going to continue calling the plays? So I think that would be the next question that I tee up for you, and I'll answer it first. Do you want to see somebody like him calling plays? Or are you okay with Sean? I like Sean McDermott calling plays. I think that he settled in pretty well, and there's something to be said for what he said in one of his pressers. Like, when you're the head coach and the defensive coordinator, there's a heaping ton more on your plate that you have to deal with, which I felt affected his ability to keep P's and Q's in order on special teams and on offense when Dorsey was here. But in-game management, Andy Reid, there's so many guys that are calling plays as far as that goes, and it works. So I don't have a problem with Sean McDermott calling Shanahan. Like, there's so many head coaches that call the plays. I think I'm good with that. So if you can get a guy that's a great coach, that's a good schemer, that can like build players, and develop players, which that's something that's been critical of the Buffalo Bills, not developing players. He has developed players, to your point about all the all pros. And then you keep McDermott calling plays. I'm in it. I'm here for that. Right.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I don't have an issue at all with Sean McDermott calling the plays. I just wanted to keep Bobby in the building. So, give him that defensive coordinator position.
Yes,
and
it's Eric Washington. My bad.
I'm sorry, what?
He correcting me on Eric Washington. Yes, I said Bobby.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, keep Bobby in the building and give him the position that he needs. And I'm sure with that position, it's not like, okay, well, yeah, I'm still gonna just do whatever I was doing, and Sean is still technically the defensive coordinator. He's gonna take some of that responsibility off of Sean's plate. So even though it might not be game day calling, a lot of that work is gonna go off of Sean McDermott's plate, and then he'll be able to focus more on some of the things that we may have felt like Sean kind of lacked in this year.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm hopeful, man. Like I like the hire on both sides. I love the DC hire, but I also love the fact that we kept Joe Brady.
Flip it. Yeah. Talk about it.
I would have liked for the interview process to be a little bit wider, just to really give people a good look on both sides. But the guys that we got and the guys that we kept, I'm very, very happy with. So I'm not complaining. I just feel like, hey, go all out and actually interview some people.
But yeah, to that point, before we talk about Joe Brady getting this job, the Dolphins are interviewing and possibly hiring Leslie Frazier, of which Miami Dolphins fans, who are just filling up my timeline on Twitter for some reason. I have more Dolphins fans on my Twitter timeline than I do Bills fans. They love this hire for a lot of reasons. And I think the biggest reason is he's going to know how to beat Josh Allen. And I'm not so sure about that. However, if we just assume that maybe he does know what Josh Allen hates, which I think we all do, pressure up the middle, constant pressure up the middle. Is there something to be said for Eric Bieniemy? Like, for offensive coordinator? Is there something to be said for bringing in the guy that knows Pat Mahomes and knows how to beat them and schemed for them, right? I mean, to your point about interviewing somebody else, and I know that, Bieniemy I don't think he did bad in Washington, right? I mean, they had for the talent that they had and the team that they had, they put up offensive points until things unraveled on them.
I would absolutely love an Eric Bieniemy interview and hire out in Buffalo, but
me too.
Because I think you see what he did with a talent like Patrick Mahomes, you put him with a talent like Josh Allen, and it's going to be fun to watch. And
right.
And then I also think that people respect Eric I know you get other reports like Shady said that he didn't like the way he talked to people and the way he treated certain players, but I think you also get other reports that I think Eric Bieniemy's presence, it doesn't sound like it now because they're back in the Super Bowl, but I think Eric Bieniemy's presence was missed in the early parts of the season. I think that they kind of struggled to kind of find themselves early on. And I think when you have a guy that can get in the quarterback's face, the superstar's face, and kind of know how to pull certain things out of them without it coming across in a way that would make the quarterback go into their shell, man, I think that that's something that I don't think that the Bills had. Daboll's gone. So I think that was part of the issue with Ken Dorsey, is that I know as passionate as like the meme was when we saw him tear up the play calling booth, I still don't think Dorsey had that relationship with Josh to where he can like check him and like pull him, reel him in.
Yeah.
certainly I don't know how the relationship with Joe Brady is, but we remember seeing Daboll in his
Yeah.
face. We remember that. So I think Josh kind of needed that for a bit, but I think now Josh has grown even more that he I don't think Josh necessarily needs that.
Yeah.
But I think somebody like Bieniemy bringing that element to the offense would be great.
I believe it was Steve Tasker. I heard Steve Tasker talking about the Ken Dorsey situation and role. And there's something to be said for what Dayball had the offense doing. And then the changes, the thumbprint, right? We want to see Ken Dorsey's fingerprints on the offense, right? And there was something that, as far as the way that when he was putting his fingerprints on it, Steve Tasker was making it sound like, and I believe Josh may have inferred it, reiterated it at some point during the season as well. But Steve was basically saying like they had to be perfect in order to be successful on offense. The routes had to be run perfect. Everything had to be perfect. And Josh Allen, and who else said it? Greg Cosell was on with John Fina and Jerry Ostrowski, if I'm not mistaken. And he said that Josh is not a precision quarterback. He's not a Kurt Warner. He's not a guy, and neither is Pat Mahomes, and neither like he's not Dan Marino, who's going to stand in the pocket and pick you apart. He's an off-script guy. So you've got to build an offense around a dude that right now in his prime is going to be a little more off script and a little more comfortable playing a little bit of backyard football, which goes back to the Beasley situation, which then turns into because Diggs runs routes that way too, where he knows how to work back to Josh and stuff like that, as did Emmanuel Sanders. And then they started putting guys around him where it's like, no, you run this route and you run the route this way, blah, 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 blah. And next thing you know, Josh is not running for his life, but he's running to his right. He's running to his left. He's coming up the middle. He's trying to find guys. I feel like that could have been part of it too, as far as just the way that Dorsey was trying to do it. Now, the question is what the hell is Joe Brady going to bring to this offense? And that's what we don't know. There's been a lot of things as you listen to people talk and you read things that like Joe Brady's offense, as much as it looked more like the Josh Allen we remember, wasn't necessarily better than the Ken Dorsey offense. In fact, EPA and some other stuff like that Bruce has talked about, like it was down. Like there was certain metrics that it's like, it seems better, but it's, if you get into the numbers, it's not. Now, clearly, I'm the first guy that says stats only matter until they don't, and I very much believe that. But we're going to find out, and I'm happy about the hire too. As much consistency as possible is always important. I feel like I loved. Surprised? Were you surprised hearing Sean McDermott say we don't have enough explosive plays and we should be pass first? Did that not blow your mind?
It didn't at all. I wasn't a fan of the way everybody was talking about him because he was a defensive quarter or a coach. You know, just because his background is in defense doesn't mean that he doesn't want his team to score.
Yeah, but
Because I feel like, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I just feel like when you look at the way the team is constructed, you don't. And I know he's not the GM, but you don't go and get a Stephon Diggs. You don't go and get you don't go and get certain guys if you don't want your offense to be a certain way.
Right.
If you wanted to be he would have built the same team Rex Ryan had. If he, you want to be a bully defense, running, pound the ball, we would have traded for Derrick Henry. It would have happened. It wouldn't have been,
sure.
Going to get Stephon Diggs. It would have been, hey, let's go get whatever running back that we compare with Josh Allen, that we could be the best running offense in the league. And then Josh can make magic happen when he does. And that's that. No, they went and got him receivers. They went and got Cole Beasley in the slot because it was easier for Josh to throw the ball. John Brown, Stephon Diggs, you go and get guys that can create separation to throw the ball. I get it. We like to talk, and the media, we talk. So you got to drive a narrative when things are going bad. And Sean McDermott's the reason that the offense has struggled. No, Sean McDermott called defense. That's his job.
I was on board with that though because of what we had seen in the past. So when you talk about this season and you talk about what they were trying to do, and we got to play complementary football, and it's like, well, what isn't working here? Right. Like, so it seemed like that they were abandoning the run early on in the season with Ken Dorsey, yada, yada, yada. So it's like, well, it seems like he's inferring that he wants to run the football. Then you go back to what the 2019 season, the 2019 or 2020, can't remember exactly. It was when my show started, and specifically the Browns game that we lost because they didn't. That's the one where I believe Jordan missed an interception. Like he went to reach out and grab it and just missed it. And we could have won, sealed the game right there. But the Bills were having a lot of success on the ground, and Dable refused to run the ball in that football game and just kept passing the ball. And like McDermott, and it had happened for several weeks. And McDermott was like, we got to have a come to Jesus meeting. And then afterwards, like he said, we had a come to Jesus meeting. And sure enough, the Bills came out and started running the ball a little bit more. So I felt like there was some legitimate, things that held the sauce, right? As far as McDermott wanting to run the ball. And then he's like, yeah, we need to be more explosive and we need to be a pass first team. And I'm like, wait. I don't know what to believe at this point, because that's not what I expected to hear from you at all. But what you just said was heavy. Like, if he wanted to be a run first team, he'd have gone and got Derrick Henry. And you're right. He would have. They would have made that trade, right? Even for a rental, just to see what happens. Yeah. Let's go get this guy.
And to your point, because you mentioned, like the stuff about, with no, he had to come to Jesus talk, and we're going to run the ball more. And even talking about Dorsey early, his numbers versus, like, I think when you look at those first, because I think when we played against the Raiders, we blew them out. The Dolphins game, I think, factors into that. So I think you have a couple games like in that first 6 week period that might skew the stats in a way that make it look a little bit better, because the games that I don't think anybody was complaining about Dorsey at all after the Miami game.
Right.
I think it was, specific moments and key moments in the season where you're like, why is the Patriots game? When you look at that, I know we got fired after the Broncos game, but that Broncos game, and you look at games like that, and it's like, why can we look like this against the Dolphins? But then, like, we do this. So I just think that was the inconsistency is what looks so different with Dorsey. Yeah. And then I think with Brady, the run game and the time of possession, those things for me were stats that I cared about, and those improved like dramatically under Joe Brady. Yeah. So I think it depends on what statistics you care about when you say, because I agree with you, stats don't matter until they do, or stats matter until they don't. And right. It's like, It depends on which ones you care about. So for me, I cared to see James Cook kind of really become more of a factor. And when Joe Brady took over, to me, they did. So I love it. I love it.
And a perfect example of that phrase working is it worked all season long until the Chiefs game, where we had the ball for almost twice as long, and but the defense couldn't stop them every single time they got the football. They didn't punt until the third
game too, though.
They didn't punt until the third quarter. It worked in
the Chiefs game.
You got to make them punt. You got to make them punt, and they couldn't stop them. They couldn't make them. They punted twice in that game.
And this is where it gets weird for me. The offense, I feel like they let Josh down, but the offense isn't the reason we lost the game.
Agreed.
All season,
I was saying the defense. The defense has to make a punt.
Yeah, no, the defense had a huge part, and then special teams had a huge part. All year, since you've known me, Joe, since we've been doing Hump Day Hotline together, since I came on your show as a guest for the first time that we did anything together, I've been talking about how important special teams is, and it's been a consistent thing.
It's true. So I would say
this game.
Yep, I would say let's wrap this show up. But I think
I'm ready to stop talking about it too, man.
I think that we are both thumbs up on both of those hires. I think that we are excited about Bobby Babich as well as Joe Brady. Really kind of excited, just as I was about Ken Dorsey, to see what Bobby can or Joe Brady can do as far as putting his fingerprint and like a lot of his design and what he's going to do to make this offense better. I felt like, to your point, he was a little better at using the guys for what they were good at. Whereas it felt like Ken Dorsey more wanted to run a system. He wants to I want to run this system, which is good. So should I read this? Whiskey says, I think teams are just better than Buffalo at coaching. The Bills coaches failed the franchise for 3 years straight. I'm for a head coach change. So he's got Keanu Reeves as Jesus. Keanu Reeves, or is that Shane Falco? Could that have been Shane Falco from the Replacements, which was on the other day? And of course I watched it. Yeah. So any final thoughts before I get us out of here?
No, if anybody that's listening or watching is going to be in Las Vegas for the Super Bowl, please, Buffalo Rumblings, Stevie Johnson, we're going to be together next Friday. So I want everybody to come out and hang with us. I did tweet it out. I will make sure that, we push it enough that you have all the details, but it's a private address. So when you register, you'll get the address. So reach out to us on any of the platforms at Buffalo Rumblings or at J. Spence the King, and I'll make sure we get you that information that's needed to participate. But it's gonna be fun. I hope to see people in Vegas, man. I know the Bills aren't in it, but it's gonna be a good time. And the NFL, they know how to entertain, and Vegas is the city for it, man. It's gonna be a blast.
I think they should just do the Super Bowl in Vegas every year. I think
every year,
every year,
and
the draft and Super Bowl Vegas.
I agree.
Year. It's the playground for adults. Line the Game coming up after the show.
Yes, Line the Game coming up.
So everybody stick around. 20 minutes. Line the Game with Jerry and Sarah's coming up. But ladies and gentlemen, you've been tuned into the Hump Day Hotline on the Buffalo Rumblings Vidcast Network. My name is Joe Miller. That over there is Jay Spencer King. For me, for James.
Go Bills.
Go Bills. Talk to you guys soon.